Good day, everyone. My name is Deanne Anderson, and I'm here from EcoBusiness, a media and intelligence business company dedicated to sustainable development goals and ESG performance. Today, I am here from the Boston Consulting Group office in Singapore, a firm that has recently launched their Climate and Sustainability Hub. Climate change is the defining challenge in our time today, and companies around the world are fighting towards hitting their ambitious net zero commitments. At BCG, their climate and sustainability teams helps clients turn those pledges into action and seize new opportunities to build a more competitive advantage. Today, I am here at the BCG office for a fireside chat with two key appointment holders. I have David Sivaprasad, Managing Director and Partner, Southeast Asia Lead, Climate and Sustainability at Boston Consulting Group with me here today. Dave is a core member of the energy, social impact, public sector, and people organization practices at BCG. Also with me here today, I have Michael Tan, Managing Director and Partner, Southeast Asia Lead, Public Sector at Boston Consulting Group. Michael leads BCG's public sector practice in Southeast Asia and is a member of the Center for Digital Governments. So both Dave and Michael are heading the climate and sustainability practice here in Singapore at the Boston Consulting Group. Dave and Michael, I would like to pass it over to you both to please share a little bit more about yourselves and share a little bit more about your work here at BCG. Michael, can we start with you first, please?
Sure. Very happy to join you here. My name is Michael Tan. I'm a Managing Director and Partner based in BCG Singapore office. I lead our public sector practice across Southeast Asia. And in that capacity, I've had the privilege to work with many governments around the region on some of their most critical and impactful topics. And of course, climate change and sustainability is the most important topic for our generation and for the future of our planet. So very happy to be here to join you.
Thank you, Michael. Over to you, Dave.
Thanks. I'm Dave Sivaprasad. I'm an MD and partner in Singapore. I lead our climate and sustainability practice in Southeast Asia, and I've had the privilege over the last 20 years to work with energy and public sector clients across a range of topics. And over the last 5 years, have very much focused on energy transition and climate.
Thank you both for taking the time and joining me here today for this fireside discussion on the topic of Future Fast Forward, BCG's Climate Sustainability Hub. We will take this time to really go deeper and dive into BCG's Climate Sustainability Hub and the roadmap in the coming years ahead. We will explore various themes such as talent development, finance and investment, and partnerships and enhancing capabilities within the region on sustainability and climate change issues. To begin our conversation, I would like to start with getting some of your sharings and insights on what is the purpose and vision of the hub and why is it based here in Singapore. Michael, maybe if you can get us started.
Sure. Happy to share. So the way we think about it, Asia Pacific is the fastest growing region in the world economically. It's a region that's also very diverse. There's a lot of advanced economies like Singapore. There are also many emerging economies like Indonesia, India, etc. If we think about the requirements of climate change and growth moving forward, oftentimes people may think of them as being in conflict, but we do believe that if you are able to bring the best of business, the best of government, and the best of people together, we will be able to set the region off to a more sustainable path of growth. So the purpose of why BCG decided to set up the hub here is really to bring the global best of what BCG has to offer into the region, to work with all the important stakeholders and to be able to help them power the future of what a green Asia Pacific could be looking like. To your question around why Singapore, I think Singapore to us is a location and a country that has demonstrated very strong commitment to the green agenda and the green future. They announced a very ambitious green plan, 2030. So we can see that they are a government and a country that really believes in it and they want to walk the talk. Secondly, Singapore also holds a unique position as a hub in the region. So there are many global businesses and regional businesses that operate here. And we believe that having a hub in Singapore is a good way where we can team with many of the most important companies and stakeholders and be able to have a positive multiplier effect across the whole region.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing and giving us a context to the vision and mission of the BCG Climate Sustainability Hub and why it's based here in Singapore. I think you touched on a great point that it is a regional hub and that it is a hub focusing at both emerging economies but also developed economies as well. And I think, as you shared, Singapore has been a hub of its own and has been very progressive on their sustainability development goals as well. So moving forward, I would like to get some insights on how some of the general sustainability trends are like here in the region. What are the current sustainability trends to look out for in the region? Could you share a bit more insights from perspectives of different stakeholders in some of the different industries? Maybe Dave, if I could pass this over to you to share.
Sure. So as you know, Deanne, the region is extremely diverse. Southeast Asia, across each country has very diverse economies, very different national circumstances, and hence this drives very different pathways of transition that these countries would have. So just to start with decarbonisation and mitigation, the sectors that are represented in each country very much drive the nature of the transition that they face. So, for example, some countries have high fossil fuels in their mix, whereas others have high potential in renewables. So, really, as a region, you really have to de-average and think about the pathways differently. And this has deep implications in terms of the companies that operate in these respective countries. So that's one part, the mitigation part. The second is that the region as a whole is highly exposed to physical climate risk. So just to give you some dimensions around this, if you look at the top 50 countries in the world that contribute 90% of GDP, out of the top 5 that are most exposed to climate risk, 4 are in Southeast Asia, right? So there's the big countries, large coastal communities, island states that's spread across, they are all exposed to rising sea levels, increasing storms, heat stress, and so on. So on multiple fronts, the region needs to have a climate agenda high across public and private sector, which then brings me to the point of public and private sector interface, in the sense that many parts of Southeast Asia, some of the key parts of the economy are driven by state-owned enterprises, government-linked companies that play not just a role which is commercial and driving the private sector agenda, but also progressing the agenda of the country. So they play an outsized role in driving a transition agenda for the respective countries that they operate in.
No, thank you for sharing the current trends that we see in Southeast Asia and in the region as well. And I think it's quite interesting that you're sharing that we are in the middle of the sustainability and climate change issues, with some of the biggest countries being part of the coastal ecosystem as well. And I think it's interesting that you're sharing that there is an intersection between the sectors, between the government and also the business sector as well. As we see in the space and in the conversations, there is a need for enriching partnerships in order to maximize impact and also create a strong and cross-cutting partnerships across the different scales needed to enable sustainable outcomes. What are some case studies or some sharings of how enriching partnerships can maximize sustainable impact in the context of goals set by Singapore and others in the region?
I think the way we think about sustainability is that it's a challenge that requires many helping hands, and to be able to do it well, we require a lot of different stakeholders to be able to work together. One very strong partnership that we have anchored in Singapore is a partnership with the Global Centre for Maritime Decarbonisation, or GCMD for short. So it's a non-profit organisation that's based in Singapore, and what they try to do is to look into the future of the maritime sector and be able to drive decarbonisation very strongly to meet the agenda for 2030 and 2050. And they do this in a number of ways. So they look into supporting setting up of better standards, financing some innovation, and to be able to drive the technology agenda as well. So maybe just 2 examples of how we have worked with the GCMD in 2022. So one way that we have worked with them is to really, as a team, look into a lot of the cutting-edge technologies that are out there that can be implemented and installed on ships, vessels that are traveling around the world, and to see how they are able to cut emissions. We look at which of these technologies are most efficient, which of them are most impactful, and as a result, which are the ones that would make sense to fund and to scale moving forward. A second example is to look into how ships are refueling around the world, so we call it bunkering. And Singapore is a major bunkering hub for the global maritime trade. But this is also a business that can be very pollutive. If we think about global bunkering patterns and we think about introducing green fuels to make it more sustainable in the future, we need to look at how bunkering patterns could therefore change, and therefore what would then be the needs for governments, for businesses, for ship owners to evolve in order to help the overall sector become much more sustainable and much more green. And this we feel is critically important because the maritime sector is the lifeblood of the region, it's the lifeblood of Singapore. It contributes significantly to the GDP of many countries and also employs many people. So helping to smooth the transition and be able to move it onto a much greener footing is something that we feel is critically important, and we've been very privileged to be able to work with GCMD on this important topic.
Thank you, Michael, for sharing such kind of key insights on the importance of partnerships for impact and how innovation actually plays a key part between partnerships and sectors in the different sectors here. So currently the world is facing a gap within innovation and technology. So Dave, I would pass this question over to you. How might we enable greater investment and accelerate for the scaling of innovative approaches for a swift and equitable transition to a more sustainable global economy?
So there are many technologies that are needed, and they need to be scaled very quickly for us to achieve a net zero path, around 1.5 degrees, right? And many of those technologies exist today. The challenge is scaling them, to commercial viable application. One of the challenges that we face in Southeast Asia, for example, is that many technologies are needed, but they're also interconnected, right? So I'll give you an example: carbon capture and storage, hydrogen, renewables. You could look at these technologies separately, but they're also deeply interconnected. So for example, the chemical industry in the region needs green hydrogen. The power sector can provide low-cost green energy in certain countries. Some countries have storage capacity for CO2. Other countries have large sources of CO2 emissions. So when you look at this picture across the region, there's a deep opportunity to connect these up, right? So you have the chemical sector needing green hydrogen or low carbon hydrogen. You have some sectors, some countries which have access to storage. You have other countries that have access to low carbon, low cost renewables, and having business models that connect these up and have public-private sector participation unlocks opportunities across the region. So this is just one example where technologies need to scale. They exist, but you look for the opportunities for synergy, both in terms of the technology synergy, the business model synergy, but also where the public and private sector can intersect. So that's on hard engineering technologies that need to scale, right? In addition to that, there are many opportunities that come out with regards to how data will be used, for example, measurement, verification, how data can be used for decision support, whether that's decision support in terms of where you would invest to drive a mitigation path, or decision support in terms of how you build resilience. And these are all opportunities. One, there's a need, and two, there are business opportunities and commercial opportunities that the private sector can play a part in delivering these solutions.
Thank you for sharing and really touching upon how all these different sectors are very much interconnected, and all these different initiatives are all interconnected in some form. So moving forward, what are the capabilities needed to sustain and power green ventures and initiatives? What does this look like for BCG? Dave, I'm going to pass this over to you first to get us started and share a little bit more about the broader talent development here at BCG.
What we're observing is that these issues in climate and sustainability are increasingly broad and interconnected, right? So we start with climate and decarbonization, but really it's closely related to nature, biodiversity, it's related to water, food systems, and so on. So they're largely interconnected issues, and you can't address one without addressing the others, right? So what that means in terms of capabilities that are needed, and how BCG looks at it, is that we really do need a broad set of capabilities, and we need them both broad and deep in various disciplines, and that has driven both our hiring in terms of looking for people that are deep in climate science, in biodiversity, in the technical topics that are important for this transition, but also broad and people that understand the interconnections. And we've not just gone out to hire people, but we've also acquired as well. So as give you an example, we've welcomed Qantas to join the BCG group, and they're a group of deep climate scientists and scientists that are deeply involved in biodiversity and nature. They bring a whole host of new capabilities that are needed to serve the needs of our clients.
Thank you for sharing this. And Michael, maybe I'll pass this over to you to narrow it down a little bit more and share a little bit about what are BCG's plans here in Singapore.
So Dave has spoken about the need to build capabilities, both broad and deep. And in Singapore, we are doing exactly that. So we are teaming up with many of the education and academic institutions here to really look at the curriculum for building technical capabilities as well as new capabilities for the students, as well as to be able to bring it to the market for the broader workforce that's out there, to be able to really embed them with the new capabilities that are necessary for powering the green revolution of the future. Another important area that we're looking into is to welcome interns into BCG in Singapore and in the region to work with us on many of these exciting, cutting-edge sustainability and green projects. We believe that this gives them hands-on experience, and it's a very tangible way for them to really understand what the green jobs of the future could look like, and if you want to play a role, how it could be different from the past. So these are just some examples of areas in which we're teaming up with the broader ecosystem in Singapore.
Thank you both for this conversation so far. It's been very fruitful and very insightful for myself. I think moving ahead, I understand that BCG is really moving towards this sustainability and climate change initiative and really focusing at looking at the different sectors and how the different sectors play a role within this. So maybe before we close off, I would love to pass it over to you to share some final thoughts. Maybe Dave, we can start with you.
Sure, thanks, Dian. I would say this is a massive challenge for the region, and we as BCG really want to play a part to contribute to progressing this agenda. And we're looking for people to join us on this journey, right? And it's folks with diverse expertise and experience, but not just expertise and experience, but also a passion and a drive to really have an impact and make a difference. So very, very excited to partner and collaborate with different groups and people to progress this agenda.
Thank you, Dave. Over to you, Michael.
I think maybe as a final parting word, I think we would like to think about the change towards green as something that needs to be addressed at a very holistic level. We think about the green change as something that's a horizontal force, and it's cutting across all sectors, all facets of the economy, all sectors of society, and therefore for everybody, it's not just something that someone else is going to be doing, but there's a role for everyone to play, and the ways of living and the ways of working moving forward needs to be fully aware and being able to think about how I can do it in a low carbon way, how I can be much more resource efficient. And I think in a region like Asia Pacific, where there's a very wide spectrum of economic development, we also need to think about a green change that can be much more socially inclusive and a prosperity that can be shared across all the different stratas of society. And that's what we are aiming to do and contribute at ESG.
Thank you both for joining me here today for such an insightful discussion. I'm excited for BCG's Climate and Sustainability Hub's future. I'm Dian Anderson from Eco Business. Joined with me here today is Michael and Dave. Thank you for listening in to this conversation.